Hello everybody. We are here to discuss the topic of digital audit. Okay. Now, this is in the context of CA final auditing syllabus, where this is one of your topics. Okay. Now, what is special about digital audit and what is digital about audit? Now, like we all know, there are two components when we enter into an audit engagement. So there is an auditor and there is an audit environment. Okay. Now, the auditor is going to employ audit procedures and gather all data and audit evidences required to provide an opinion as to whether the state of affairs of the organization is represented truly in the financial statements or on whatever records that he has audited. In the case of the digital audit, what becomes very important is how the audit environment is structured. Okay? The reason is this is a highly technology driven environment. Now, what do I mean by saying technology driven environment? When the audit environment is said to be heavily invested onto technology, there are few aspects that stand out. One, many of the processes are automated. Okay. Then the audit trail that is important for the auditor is going to be digital. And there are several such things that stand out in an audit environment which is inclining towards technology. Now, we have two different components here. One, we have the auditor who has the basic skills of, or I should say, expert skills in auditing an entity, as against that there is an environment that is heavily technology driven. Now, let us understand these two components separately. Why does an organization choose to be digital? The reality of the matter is, today, at least I cannot think of any entity, any management, any organization that can survive without the base being the technology itself. Why? The reason is, most businesses today, they are distributed across geographies. One, two, they have all found that there is better efficiency, better effectiveness in using an environment that has minimum manual intervention. Okay? Now, it is a known fact that more is the manual intervention, more is the chance of errors, risk of fraud, risk of material misstatement, etc. So what happens in this environment is the entire business processes of the organization is handled through an integrated solution. Now, what do I mean by integrated solution? Integrated solution means that different components of the business, they all sync and work with each other seamlessly. Like for example, say there is one aspect of the entity where purchase orders have to be raised. Okay. Now, then later the same purchase orders get approved and then invoices are raised and sent to the supplier for procuring say goods. In a non-digital environment, all of this used to be traditionally back in the days, all of them used to be manual. Okay. Here what happens is a request for a PO creation, purchase order creation is submitted after giving the basic details. Once it is submitted and when there is an invoice creation request submitted, the invoice is created and the sending, the communication mechanism is also automated and there is no manual intervention needed. Okay. What I am trying to explain here is that you can think of the length and breadth of the business processes: stock management, debtor management, receivables, payables, fixed assets, document management, that is digital signature, etc. All those things. Okay. All of them are driven by technology. Now, there are pros and cons to this for the auditor. Okay. The pros are that the auditee is able to standardize the operations. Is able to standardize the operations. One, then he gets more efficiency in this kind of an environment. Okay. Then there is, in the long run, there is a lot of cost effectiveness and a better standing against the competition. Overall, the business management is done more accurately. Now the cons. This is probably the area where the auditor has to be concerned. Now, one of the important consequences of an automated technology-driven environment is that access to different areas of business. Now, the basic thumb rule in auditing all of us know is the maker and checker, they have to be different. Now, personally, having them as two different people, yes, manageable. Here, the whole support system of managing maker checker is done through login credentials. Now, the login credentials, that is a set of ID, password, etc., they can be made separately and handed over to the users. At the same time, the auditor needs to gather sufficient evidence to say that they are not being misused or not being shared. Because the whole purpose of his opinion then will not stand valid if this is violated. For a moment, let us pause on the environment because we kind of now got a picture of the complexity, though we have not gone the stretch of it. Let us now think about the auditor. Now, the auditor, to be able to handle this situation, needs to have few other additional skills along with the auditing skills, which means the auditing skills bring with them knowledge of legal regulations, procedures of audit, okay? And along with that, he needs to skill himself or upskill himself to be able to manage a complex environment that is driven by technology. One. Two, to be able to gather evidence, audit evidence, such as audit trials, etc., in this systemic environment. Okay. Now, to do that, the audit procedures that were actually employed earlier now will not stand the test of time. What needs to be done now is the auditor also employs software driven methods gather the audit evidence that he needs or to make sure that the internal controls are working fine. Now mind you, the internal controls are also embedded into this systematic environment. The auditor, when he approaches the management, okay, which is an important part of audit, when he approaches the management for information on internal controls, most of the times the management is going to turn the system towards auditor and say that it's all yours. You can find whatever you want from here and take it. Then the auditor needs to have that ability to be able to extract the needed information from this systematic environment, for which there are tools, methods available. Let's take a couple of examples. Okay. One is to take an image of all the records that are available and then apply tools, procedures that are used for analysis to identify what is the basic data, what does it look like, okay? Are there internal controls working and efficient, okay? Or one of the often used methods by the auditor is to place a sample data inside or introduce the data and see how it gets processed in the system to make sure that this is how the other data also would have been managed, right? Now, if this was not enough, okay, let's get into the other dimension of digital audit, which makes the auditor kind of imperative to have skills to analyze, to be able to deal with such an environment, to execute the engagement. Okay. Let me clear the board to some extent. The other area that kind of stares at the auditor asking for resolution is cyber risk that gets attached to such an environment which is digitally stored, digitally processed. Okay. Now, the system could be placed, say, internally on a server, or as is the trend now, to place them on a cloud. Right? Now, both of these are subject to several unauthorized access. Okay? What we popularly call as hacking. Okay? Several unauthorized risk of access is available over here. Now, it is for the auditor to check with the management that what steps have you taken to prevent things such as denial of service attacks, okay, introduction of viruses or worms, okay. How do you ensure that there are no spoofing, spamming? All these are part of what the management owes to the auditor, so that he can come to a reasonable conclusion and provide an assurance that in this particular environment, the management is still running it, and the financial statements, balance sheet, P&L, cash flow, fund flow, the state of affairs of the organization is still maintained in such a way that the objectives of the organizations are met, and the auditor's opinion is true and fair. He is able to come to a conclusion having performing all the procedures in that differently demanding environment and providing an audit.